Good morning, everyone. Welcome to, the day before the Sacred Triduum and the celebration of Passover, which I know just a little bit about. I would not want to stand here before you and repute to have a deep understanding from a Hebrew perspective of Passover. But I do find that that entire series of stories is rich, something we could probably mine for years, for all our lives, if we were to go from the slavery in Egypt of the Israelites all the way through to the promised land. If we were to take just that series of stories, I think we would have a wealth of opportunity and invitation into our own growth. When I sent out the email, I posed a couple questions about hearing and responding. Because one of the themes that I think is most powerfully in the Hebrew scriptures, at least for me and for my investigation, is this notion of covenant and relationship. And this hunger of the divine, of God, this hunger of God to have each human being, and the Israelites, the symbol of that, the community, to have them for God's own. There seems to be this drive towards wanting all from the human beings that God considers his own. And I don't think, you probably would know this, that it's an exclusion, that there's a certain chosen people that God wants for God's own, and then there are those that God doesn't want as much. I think the reason there's a focus on any individual or group at any specific time is solely as a chance to highlight the intimacy that this divine consciousness wants. And this harkens back to some of the most ancient writings when it comes to divine desire and consciousness in form and life force. And I've alluded to it oftentimes that there is within us this longing for the eternal that is itself the eternal longing for us. The Feast of Passover leading into those years in the desert is, to me, an eloquent poem of the divine desiring. Think about if God, as God spoke to Moses, I'll just use the language of the Hebrew text. Think about what it would have been like if God had said, I want to free you and take you to the promised land. But to get there, you're going to be 40 years in a desert with no food and no water. And you're going to run into challenge after challenge after challenge. It probably would have struck a lot of hesitancy for the Israelites, right? But that's not the way the divine desire works, is it? An inspiration comes, sometimes in the form of a miracle. And leading up to Passover, there were 10 plagues, the 10th being the killing of the firstborn, that came upon Egypt as these miracles, as these interventions to spark, to awaken the Israelites, symbolic for all humans, to awake the Israelites to know that they're wanted, that they're loved, that there is a God of all that is hot on their path, like the hound of heaven. And in that awakening, the Israelites begin to trust. Isn't that the case with us? That stepping into the unknown, it's rare that we have these huge surrenders that result in us in 100% awakening. Usually our evolution is a step by a step by a step. And some of them are the dramatic miracles that set us on fire. And some of them are meeting challenge and finding that in the challenge itself, we are resourced. If you wish to put it in God language, we are carried. We are delivered. Now, once the Passover takes place, and God puts out these rules, and my take on the rules, because if you look at some of the languaging, law is very much like love, if you look at some of the words used. So law is not this so much. It's more like, I love you so much. Here's the path of freedom. Here's the path that will lead you into your ultimate happiness. When you look at the Passover, there are instructions. And the first step is for the Israelites to hear the instructions. I don't know that all the Israelites heard the instructions. I mean, heard it where their hearts were opened. I bet there were some Israelites that balked at what Moses was proposing came from God. And then the hearing results in a response, right? Because of that relational desire. So it's not just do this, it's do this so that you might be free. See, the promise is ultimate liberation. Do this so that you might be free. And in the response, those that responded were led where? Into the desert. Into a place that was a further and a further and a further divesting. My friends, that is the spiritual path. That is the path. I don't know of any mystic that came to where their level of freedom was that didn't walk that path, that didn't hear, respond with all their heart, and then be led into a further divestment. But not so much in a way that was suffering, but in a path that was the freedom of suffering. You see, the turn of the language, if you read some of the scriptures from the Passover and the time in the desert, is this turn of a phrase seems to point again and again that everything's a setup for one thing, for the human being to realize the covenantal relationship. And I believe as a species, we have evolved to understand that the covenant is us, that we are the living covenant. You'll see that if you read those long passages of stories from Passover to Promised Land, that you'll find that during that time, so much development happened as a sacred community. The ark, the commandments, the tabernacle, rituals and ceremonies, all of these began to develop into an identity. And while the divine was investing and forming into the identity, the divine also knew that that too would need to be destroyed, right? I mean, Moses didn't even enter the promised land. Now, my take on that is that Moses had come to such a place of freedom and intimacy with God that he didn't need a physical promised land. He was already the promised land. But you can see in the history of the Israelites as a metaphor for us that even when the promised land happens, there's more organization around the material. And some of the most eloquent covenantal passages come later, after David, after the development of the Psalms, after Jerusalem and the pilgrimages. There is a further evolution in the Babylonian exile, where the people are brought forward again to realize that even in this building up in the material, it all falls short, and that they could find God where? Already written on their hearts, which is the message all along for us, that the God's signature is already written upon our hearts. Our hearts would not be our hearts if they were not the signature of God. So let's today in our devotional honor the wealth of mysticism that we have in the Hebrew culture, which, as I say, I know very little. I'm giving you my own mystical interpretation of it. No, in no way a true representation of how someone who's deeply mystical in the Hebrew path might speak of these things. But I do think that one thing is certain, and that there is a divine desiring that mysteriously is alive in our hearts and souls. So let's honor the Hebrew culture and this contribution to humanity that is so untapped. How often I hear people refer to the Old Testament as as all the passages of judgment of an angry God. And I can tell you it saddens my heart, because what I see is a God that's not angry, but a God that desires nothing less than the whole person. I don't see a God of punishment. I see a God that's so clear in revealing that there is just one path to true freedom, and that is the letting go of everything, the divestment of everything, to discover that we possess all things. We have been on pilgrimage, and we're going to enter into the climax of this pilgrimage starting tomorrow. But today is the beginning of that feast. Let our Passover today, our ascent to it, our ascent to go into this desert even more deeply, lead us into the richness of the banquet tomorrow of the Last Supper. And many thanks to our Hebrew sisters and brothers who said yes to this, that we might have those that have gone before us. We're not the first ones to travel this path. So I invite you to close your eyes. And bring your attention to the breath. Let the breath be a symbol to you of the divine desire, rising up within you on the inhale to fill you with presence, and expanding outward on the exhale, allowing you as well to rest into, to contract into the center point of your being. So the inhale expands you, filling you to the very edges of your being. And the exhale, as it goes forward out into our world, lets you come back to the center point of this divine desiring, this covenant, the covenant of you. Keep breathing in this way, letting the breath be the divine desire. And in your own way, say yes to leaving the land that you've known, the land of the ways you know and see yourself, and willingly, knowing that you don't have a time frame on the path, willingly step into the wilderness once again, resting assured that you can count on one thing, that this divine desire will be your consolation, will be the bread that you eat, the wine that you drink, will be the voice you hear when you wonder which way to go, will be the shade that you receive as you rejuvenate under a tree. Like Elijah, you will be fed by ravens, and you will be brought into such intimacy that you will hear the whisper, the breath of God clearly. And let the words of John of the Cross be a companion to you. On a dark, secret night, starving for love and deep in flame. Oh, happy, lucky flight. Unseen, I slipped away. My house at last was calm and safe. Blackly free from light, disguised and down a secret way. Oh, happy, lucky flight. In darkness I escaped. My house at last was calm and safe. On that happy night in secret, no one saw me through the dark. And I saw nothing then, no other light to mark the way, but fire pounding in my heart. That flaming guided me more firmly than the noonday sun. And waiting there was the one I knew so well, who shone where nobody appeared to come. O night, my guide, O night more friendly than the dawn, O tender night that tied lover and the loved one in the lover, fused as one. On my flowering breast, which I had saved for my love alone, he slept, and I caressed, and fondled him with love, and cedars fanned the air above. It is my own commitment to you, my friends on the journey. I end this devotional with the words of Ruth in the Hebrew text. Wherever you go, I shall go. Wherever you live, so shall I live. Your people shall be my people. Your God will be my God too. And when you are ready, open your eyes. And off we go. Look forward to where this takes us. As a reminder, in just a few hours, I'm waiting for a little more feedback from someone that's going to participate. We're going to enter the sacred triduum. The email that I send out today will have all 4 links for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights and Sunday morning. In it as well will be a very simple program that will show you the flow of each gathering that we have. If you wish to have a copy of the songs that will be used and the chants that will be used, I have them recorded. Please email me privately and you can listen to them ahead or practice them, or at least have the words in front of you as we celebrate together. There will also be optional preparations for each of the evenings for you. Once that email goes out today, I'm not sending another. I'd like to be offline as much as I can in the next 4 days. That being said, I will not be offline. If you have an issue, send me an email and let me know your question, and I'll respond. But just know that today's email will be the last one that you're going to receive that will contain everything you need for the next 4 days. So I have loved making this journey with you, and I look forward to where the next 4 days takes us. Have a great day, everybody.